Hello, I'm Noah Nerd. I've not done a video for a while, but I thought I'd revisit this Solar Gold Rush project I was working on a while ago. I can't remember how far I got into describing everything that's going on in the background of that, and I think I'm going to also open this repository up. So if anybody wants to contribute to a sort of generative space game with JavaScript A-frame, then please contribute to the project. So basically the main loop of the game, or the main mechanic, is obviously in a spaceship, you travel around, but it's also generating galaxies on the fly. That's the essential loop of it. So we've got these suns here, accelerate, obviously de-accelerate, move around. I had planned to make a planet landing thing, but yeah, I've not done that. But anyway, I did have big ideas for this, like make it into a resource allocation thing or something. But I'm not going that far. But this is still, I think, quite an interesting project, even in the form it's in now, which is extremely prototypal and a little bit messy, right? And I think, obviously, I'm going to open source it so that if someone or a group of people want to do something with it or make it into a component or a framework or what have you for making space experiences, then I'd love someone to do that. So yeah, I'm just going to demonstrate what it's like at the minute. So yeah, so if I go hyperspeed, it'll generate a new galaxy. So that name is generated randomly, the number of stars is generated randomly, and then I press H just to get out of the hyperspace. Now I'm in a completely new generated galaxy with different positions of stars, planets, etc, etc. A different number of stars as well. So that's like the core thing that it does. That's quite interesting, right? It generates a new galaxy. So it's simulating hyperspace travel, I suppose. You can see there's like sort of stars in the background as well. I apologise for my voice a bit croaky. I've had a sore throat recently. But you can see there's also stars, so it generates these star fields, which is actually using an existing component I found, and then just basically doing sectors of those stars. It's quite an interesting experience doing this in terms of the just thinking how to approach doing a generative having to map out universes, because obviously there's lots of things that can go wrong doing that, like, how do you prevent stars from bumping into each other. Obviously there needs to be orbits set up. I've been thinking about that but not actually managed it yet. Well, like I said, I've not worked on this for a long time. I just want to sort of, obviously the planets have different textures that apply to them, but yeah. So I'll go into the code in a few minutes, but I just wanted to show that. Like I said, I'm going to open source this now, so if people want to either contribute to this repository or use it as a starting point for something they themselves are working on, then you may feel free to, basically.
Welcome to the lesson.
I did actually spend quite a lot of time on this, so yeah, it'd be good if someone can make something. Obviously it runs in the browser, it's an A-frame JavaScript thing. I'll just go to different galaxy, and you can do that as many times as you want. Just go on and on doing that. Use a queue. Some of the names are quite amusing. Anyway, I'll start looking at some of the code now. So it's quite bloated, actually, to be honest. Well, not really that bad, actually. Considering generating a galaxy, it's like the main loop is what, 600, just under 700 lines of code. I've got like a few different versions of it, but this is the main one. It's like there. We'll go over the like HTML bit, but there's not as much point. It's just like literally just like an A-frame scene, populated with some assets, blah blah blah. Obviously, there's a lot more detail I could go into that, but I'll just cover this. I'll turn the sound off on there for a minute. It's going away. So let's go to view appearance, full screen. Right. So this is the main JS, and I'm going to just go through this, talk about what the logic is behind it. It's not that perfect, obviously. Like I said, this is very prototypal. I've I've never done this before, really. Like, I've done some generative component libraries for A-frame, but nothing at this scale, so it was a lot of fun coding it, but could I say it's perfect? No. So we've got some imports at the top. So like these are just basically importing certain functionality. Generate planet, which is unfinished, but it's basically just another JavaScript file as a module, I think, which basically just generates a planet surface. And it's started to sort of get that working, but it's not fully done. And then generate names, and then generate galaxy names just for generating names, basically. Sorry if my voice is very nasally. Like I said, I've just had a really bad throat infection, which is I'm just getting over. So obviously got a utility function to create get random integer. So that's for stars number. It's just a variable, sets it as a. So these are basically like the initial variables. Some of them obviously they're all lets, so they're all reassigned. Or they can be reassigned. So stars number will be reassigned, for example, when the player initiates a hyperspeed, because you're generating a new number between 20 and 50. Game started. When the actual load starts, will be set to true. First damage, can't remember why I said that, but it's there. Just says the health is obviously the health. How much fuel you have. A lot of these things aren't actually relevant, but they were sort of planned features. Speech synchronous utterance is to do with the computer voice that speaks out the name of the galaxy. Galaxy name, that's generating galaxy name is its own separate function. And then I've got this on load. Galaxy name, which is here, is just assigned again. And then we've got this begin game, await, then a welcome, then update shield UI, update galaxy UI. And then you have the voice that says you're in this galaxy, which then takes the galaxy name, which has been generated here as, and reads that out. Basically that bit of text, speech text. So that's just basically the functionality to do with reading out the galaxy name. It's just that's sort of a minor thing, really. This is all the key listeners, so for basically accelerations, things like that. So we've got key down, just like WSAD controls at the minute. So you just get the ship by ID, and then we do this is basically just all the controls, really, to be honest. So we've got ship speed accelerates, so just plus increments it, which then creates acceleration, moves the ship forward. Likewise, I think this is sort of relevant, so this is very working code. Well, that's hyperspeed, so key H is hyperspeed. So that's initiates the hyperspeed. Something I was working on is not really finished. Yeah, so that's landing on a planet thing I was working on. Which you wouldn't have to really worry about because it's not really working. Okay, so Galaxy UI. Yeah, this is just basically functions to update the UI with the new names that have been generated. So yeah, get there, just select on the, get the element by ID on the DOM, set the attribute to that galaxy name and then convert it to a string just in case. Yada yada yada, that's pretty obvious stuff, like set the attribute directly. Update the same for shield UI. Player component obviously is going to do quite a lot of stuff there. So this is a component within A-frame to control player, just events that occur with the player. So collision, obviously set up collision. So there is a sort of basic collision detection system. It's a bit buggy, but it does work. So like if you bump into the sun, you're gonna collide with it. You're not gonna go through it. yeah, if you collide with a star, it does reduce your health. Not really tested it that much though. Debris. Again, something I was working on. Change to mana was something I was going to work on for resource collection. Again, it's like sort of a half finished thing. Player cams to do the actual camera within A-frame. Again, a bunch of things with collisions. Asteroids. So I did do this. I think they're still in there. I'm not sure if I might have commented them out for a while, but there are asteroid fields that get created too. So there's a little thing there about when it's initiated. Get a copy of the object's position in 3D space. Then the tick function is like something that happens every second, basically. Within the component lifecycle. It's not ready, return. Player position. Update. Set this player position. That checks for the distance from the debris to the position. So basically it gives you a warning if there's an asteroid field nearby, just to give you a bit of a warning. That's usually works. And then I think this basically just some stuff to do. I'm not sure, I've not looked at that code for a while. Cursor listeners, that red dot in the middle. So the idea, which I never got this finished, I think was to give you some information about your planets. But again, I didn't get that far. Obviously quite an important one, component, and these components can be used again and again. Planet, so you set up a rotation. It's begin game. So function begin game, just basically called at the start. Bunch of music gets played, that's all music stuff. Creates a random number of stars that's randomly generated. So create stars, create the random debris, which can be the asteroids basically. And then the timer is updated, which I think is in there somewhere. Clearing the scene basically is just a deletion, so you need to clear all the information. Usually when a player goes into hyperspace, you don't want to have all that, you need to remove it from memory. I think that does it alright. So I just use parent node or child. I've not really tested that loads, so I'm not sure how removed it is, but yeah. I think in theory that's what it's supposed to do. A new scene, basically just, I think that's when, so when you're creating a new galaxy, this is the actual function that's called. So we've got like, this is all to do with like containers within the HTML, I think. The created element of entity, then a set IDs and stuff. Entity again, some asteroids, la la la. Galaxy is a generate galaxy name again, so there's nothing too interesting there. Create stars is a function which we'll probably look into in a minute. Again, that's all sort of just recalling functions of before. I'm obviously approaching it in sort of a functional way, so I don't have to repeat myself too much. I can just, I've been trying, one of the main reasons trying this out was just to see how good I can get at that, like how I could make it as efficient as possible, make it so you can reuse functions loads, yada yada yada. That's just game state, so it's time. So if health, so this basically it's called somewhere, it just basically checks if the player's still alive. If they're not, then it restarts the game. And if the player's got 4% health, then they start overheating, so a bit of effect that plays, that's all that does. And I think that's every second, it just checks that every second basically. And I think that's called somewhere in a loop. So update game state there, time plus plus, and it just checks every second. Set to the interval set to every second, that's 1,000 milliseconds, just 1 second. That's just a reasonable function for getting a random integer, getting a random color, etc. Okay, so this is a function for creating asteroid fields which are randomized as well. This is the sort of general pattern that all of the, well not all, but most of the randomized positioning, random. So it's just like literally a for loop really. So create random debris, which in this case will be a random asteroid belt. So create a container, an entity container, generate random numbers for the positioning, which obviously had to mess around with that to get that right a bit. Basically, yeah, X, Z, and Y, and then just assign those positions to the asteroid container. Create a random number of debris, asteroids in this case, between 80 and 400. Run a for loop, randomize the scale, add the primitive, which in this case is dodecahedron, because it looks like sort of like an asteroid. It does actually look quite good to the asteroids, but set the scale. Yeah, set a bunch of attributes like IDs and stuff, animation, this texture, material source, some physics stuff, and then just append the child. But obviously, as that's in a loop, it will do that however number of times you're gonna. I'll do that. Add that bit of that debris every time, whatever that number is, fields number, which will be called somewhere else. And that's sort of basically how it works for most of it, with some variation, of course. So for the planets, similar thing. You just got create an element, a sphere, of course. For this one, it's got random colours or a series of colours. And then I've also got a different types of planet that can be randomly created. So yeah, and the random textures applied as well. Return planet type is just a switch statement, I think. I think it's random. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, no. Yeah, something like that anyway. But basically, some random scaling, yada yada yada, similar to the asteroids. And then set positions in a planetary orbit. Now, I use some mathematics for this. It probably does need a bit of tweaking, to be honest, but so I'm using pi, obviously, which is to do with the radius of a circle, and it sort of works, but obviously need to get the rotation working. Probably still a work in progress, all that. And then on portals, which is something I was working on, which I already left. And then stars is very similar to planets, really, of course. With some light creation as well, which I just ended up creating as just like a sprite behind it, because lights can get very heavy in terms of the processing. So especially if you've got like 20 or 50 of these stars in a scene, it can get very heavy. So I sort of commented that out for now. But similar to the planets, you got like random positionings created. And yeah. This is, I'm using this star system component for the actual background stars, which is just like their, not the actual 3D stars, but just like their small white stars. Gives it some atmosphere. I think we got this from online, and it basically creates vertices with Free.js. There's quite a lot to go into there, so I'm not going to bother going out too much, but basically, and I copied that code, I think, pretty much from the guy who created the component library I found, so it's basically just copied in code essentially, but it does seem to work. That's the sort of function to do with returning the planet type, what type of planet it is given a certain parameter. Planet scale, I'm not sure what that was, something that that's some of the HTML, but I don't know. I'm gonna leave it at that actually. Why doesn't F11 work? Come on. Anyway. So I hope that was interesting to anybody watching. Like I said, I'm going to open source this thing now. It's on my GitHub, Solar Gold Rush. You're welcome to have a look at it. You're welcome to use it and see what you can do with it. See if you want to like if you would like to. I mean, if you do want to help me work on it, then that'd be cool. But yeah. Sorry, OBS is going crazy. Yeah. Probably a very long, rambling video. I'll probably try and do a few more videos, like on the one end, but I don't know, depends if I have enough time. Like, I'm looking for a job at the minute. I'm just about to release a game project soon, so I'm just going for a lot of testing on that. Anyway, in a bit.